The Titanic sinking. 1, 2, 3.
That's too soon. That's too soon.
All right. Okay. So let's take this off. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Noteworthy History for the start of a brand new series. I'm your host, as always, Tong. And joining me today are a few returning guests. We've got Luke.
That's me.
We got Will.
Hello.
We got Andy, the one and
Hello.
only Andy.
There are more.
Yes. And we also have Shaina coming back.
Hello.
And also joining us for the very first time, give a warm welcome to Ilana.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, today we're going to be doing something a bit different from the usual structure of the Noteworthy History podcast. So rather than focusing on a specific person or a specific time period, we're going to be focusing on a specific place through history, the Suez Canal. Now, each part of this is going to tackle a different time frame of the Suez Canal's history, and hopefully it's all smooth sailing. And if it sucks, well, I'm sure my editor Kevin wouldn't let us stay in denial for long.
Actually credited it.
I would like
That
to
was
speak
the
to a
pun.
lawyer.
Yeah, we got plenty more where that's coming up. So, now, first off, real quick, what do you guys know about the Suez Canal, if anything?
It's the center of a lot of conflict in the Middle East.
That's
It
true.
connects two bodies of water and it's man-made.
Yeah,
Extremely important for local shipping.
absolutely.
I know about
Cause-
Nasser.
Nasser,
Nationalizing it,
Nasser's got a
yeah.
big role in this. Yeah,
Yeah,
It
he
caused the whole
nationalized
thing.
it. It was kind of
Yeah,
his deal.
when they tried to nationalize it.
it was a bit of a
Mhm.
crisis, if you will.
I won't.
But just
It
a
consists
general
almost
overview.
entirely of water.
And land. After all, you can't have a canal without land on either side of it. Otherwise, it's just an ocean.
Well, but the canal itself consists mostly of water.
That's a reservoir, not an ocean.
That's fair. Well, actually, no. You could argue that the
Man-made?
reservoir includes the land on the outside as well.
I would like to propose that it is actually a taco.
Oh no.
It's water.
The land, no,
Sandwiched
Tom, the land
by
was
land.
there before they made the canal. Clearly, it cannot be an essential part of the canal.
Well, I mean,
Why
you
not?
still gotta hew the land.
You
to
got
make
like
it
the
work.
levees and you got like the water elevators. You need land for that.
Is
Actually,
a dock,
funnily enough, the Suez Canal doesn't have a lot of gates. That's the Panama
shit.
Canal that actually has
Huh.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually something, and we'll get into this later on, it's something that actually disincentivized early engineers from building it because they somehow thought that the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea were like at different, like,
Type of water.
well, no, it's not that. They thought that they were like at different elevations. So like one sea was
Okay.
higher than the other.
bro. It's
And
like
they're
the
like-
ultra water from 2012.
Yeah.
The ultra water?
Yeah, you know, like when all the big water comes up and somehow drowns the whole world, even though they have modern technology.
Oh,
No.
you mean the movie
movie.
2012.
Yeah.
I thought you were like something happened in 2012.
No,
Oh,
no.
you didn't- you
It's
forgot
like
about
in
that
the very
already?
beginning. In the very beginning of the movie, they were like, they had the water, and I was like, it's got like extra oxygens in it, and I was like bubbling.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
In the Suez
they
Canal.
never really explained that too
The
much.
Panama Canal is some bitch ass regular water.
Yeah.
You know, water with extra oxygens in it is called H2O2. That's a little different.
That's contrary to the regular toxic dihydrogen monoxide. That is
Yeah.
hydrogen peroxide.
Uh-huh.
Now, granted, the oceans becoming hydrogen peroxide would be bad, but
Yeah, that's true.
it would not cause mass extinction. No,
Well,
no,
it
it
would.
super would. No, it would, but
Actually,
not for a little bit. Like it'd take like a day.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah, like
so we got
once-
some time to panic about the loss of any drinkable water. So.
Yeah,
Well, yes, Tom, what do you know about the Suez Canal?
Well, I've done a little bit of research, literally just Googling this before recording. But turns out that the Suez Canal is around, nowadays anyways, 120 miles long. So nearly 200 kilometers long. And it
Huh.
saw about 983.4 million tons of cargo shipping through in 2018 on the backs of around 18,000 ships.
Could you put
So-
that in American football fields for me?
It's an ass load of American football fields long,
I
carrying
understand.
a fuckload of cargo through a shitload of ships. I think
Is
that's
that all
what
going to
we're
make the
doing
cut?
now. We might have to censor all that.
All right.
nah.
But the part that I thought that was kind of interesting is that like the Suez Canal, which is something that I think most of us would consider to be like a marvel of modern engineering, actually has a lot of ancient roots to the entire thing.
Yeah, it sounds a lot older than what is in my, because when I think of canals, I only think of the Panama Canal.
Right, and Teddy Roosevelt going roughly
And
through
Erie.
Panama. And
Right.
the Erie Canal, yeah.
Mhm.
So like all like 1800s constructions, you
I
know,
mean, if we do a little bit of meta thinking,
in 1900.
Tong did say that this is not limited to a specific time period. So
Yeah.
Is time really even linear anyway?
Well, if you look at the cover art for Noteworthy History, we actually know that time, the entire span of it, is actually just 1 centimeter long. So, from a certain point of view. But basically, the idea.
Yeah, and idiots. This dumbass.
Well, you know, an idiot to some is a wise man to others. So, we just have to say how much of
Diogenes.
each. No, I don't believe so. But basically, the earliest evidence of a canal actually dates back to the time of the pharaohs, where they built canals that connected the Red Sea to the Nile. So not as long of an effort, and it usually tried to connect to like smaller bodies of water between the two main bodies. But still a pretty impressive feat nonetheless, because you got to keep in mind people are just going at it with shovels and picks, you know.
Right, it's not the easiest project in the world.
Yeah, it's like while China was building the Great Wall, the pharaohs were digging a canal, you know.
Yeah.
I think the
they're
alien
shipping it
laser
to
beams
China.
helped a bit.
The aliens were too busy building the pyramids at this point. You can't have them doing more than one thing. You know?
I see.
They got a whole galaxy to run after all. But after the thing just kept on getting clogged up with silt, and they just gave up on trying to maintain the whole thing. The Ottomans actually, once they took over Egypt, were like, you know what? Maybe we should go ahead and dig a canal connecting the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Red Sea. Now, to be fair, this was kind of like a very, very far out there idea. And the only reason why they were doing this was because they're like, you know, we're not getting as much trade revenue from the Portuguese and the Spanish and other Western people nowadays. What's going on? You know? It's like, they're like, yeah, some guy apparently sailed around Africa. And they're like, wait, you can't do that. You know?
That's
We
illegal.
don't have a monopoly over there. So, as a result, the whole thing just became kind of just a far out vision of like, well, if we can have a canalway cut through there, we can hypothetically just go ahead and charge people a tariff so that we can go through a shorter area. So as a result of that, it never really got far off the ground. It stayed kind of a pipe dream for a lot of folks until Napoleon showed up. Now, I know that a few of the guests here are veterans from our Napoleon in Egypt series. So, if you recall, Napoleon kind of came here with a bunch of engineers, trying to scout things out, figure out who built the pyramids and all that jazz. And one of the things that Napoleon was looking at too is that, like, if we could find an easier way to go to the Indian Ocean, we might as well dig that up and then beat the British there whenever we want to, like, have a good scrap for the colonies there. So
I think
Once
they
again.
should sail westward.
sail
Try to
westward,
find the West Indies. Yeah, the West Indies.
or the Northwest Passage. That's got to
Yeah.
be the way to do it. Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah. But so like Napoleon, once again, as a force of nature, as he always is like, we're gonna go and build a canal. And then some engineers were like, well, we could do that, or we could just, sail around Africa like we've always been doing. And it's like, what? We don't need to do that. We've got control of Egypt. And then he gets kicked out of Egypt. So it's like, all right, I guess we'll just sail around the whole bloody continent. But
it's okay. Africa is only one of many of Napoleon's enemies.
only one of like the 7-nation army that was going after him at that time. Just the entirety of Africa,
Yeah, the one country.
The country of Africa, as we all clearly
As
know.
we all know, Napoleon has no equals. So
Oh,
My
no.
Spanish teacher called Africa a country. I think it's a country.
Oh, that's a very, very, very risky position that you're taking there, Andy.
She was big on being wrong about things, so I accept it.
But yeah, so going into the whole thing, what happened was part of the unfeasibility of it, aside from the fact that Egypt was no longer under French occupation, was that they had this belief that for some reason the Mediterranean Ocean, I think, was like higher in elevation than the Red Sea, or vice versa. And so that meant that they would have to use a series of locks to be able to raise ships traveling from one body of water to the other.
I wonder how they measure elevation back in the day. Do they just have one guy on one end with like a protractor and a ruler across the entire land in order to check does the land rise up?
You can do some trig shit.
Some trig?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think we'll need a math expert to tell us anything about that. So
he's in the bathroom right now.
That's where the math is being done. But yeah, so basically, I don't know. Sometimes like they have like very rudimentary kind of measurements to the extent of like literally just dropping a line off a ship weighted and to see how many like fathoms of rope that the whole thing was in terms of depth. But that only measures how deep something is relative to the surface. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. But as you can guess, like a lot of it was like just eyeballing estimates with some rudimentary math thrown into it. So it wasn't the best of things, but as a result, the French didn't really try to kick off an effort. And in fact, like the whole Suez Canal really kicked off in the 1850s. So like halfway through the 19th century, that's when people actually started looking back on the Suez Canal as a potential source of revenue and as a nice colonization project, you know? As what better way to demonstrate Western civilization than to dig a fucking canal through someone else's property.
It worked in Panama, though.
It did, and they made a new country in the process, too, if I remember.
It was some Englishman's capstone project, or whatever.
That was a Frenchman, I think, right? Who designed the... Because the French were big on building canals for some reason, or at least engineering the canals. As was the case over here. And what we saw here is a Frenchman by the Ferdinand de Lesseps, who decided in 1854 to start looking into the potentials of acquiring property rights to dig a canal. Now, the time that he chose was also a very auspicious time because the Egypt of the 1850s was a radically different Egypt, both from like the Egypt of Napoleon, who like came in there and tried to like, you know, wreck shop and make it a French colony, and also the Egypt of Muhammad Ali.
This is not the boxer.
This is not the boxer Muhammad Ali. No, he wasn't rope-a-doping around in Egypt during the early 1800s.
Yeah,
can you prove that he wasn't?
Oh, I can't. So it may very
so
well
he was. No, so he was.
Yes. So one and the same. As he was winning belts, he was also centralizing Egyptian government. But basically, after Napoleon came over, tore up the old system in Mamluk-ruled Egypt, what happened is that the Ottomans came in and then like tried to reinstate order after they kick out the French. The thing is, the Mamluks weren't really going to be able to have things running again. And one of the volunteers who joined the Ottoman like expeditionary force to kick out Napoleon was a young Albanian by the name of Muhammad Ali. And after a lot of finagling and a massacre of the Mamluk elites, he goes ahead and makes himself the governor of Egypt, a title that he then makes a hereditary title. And as part of the whole, like, I'm going to take this and make it my own thing, he goes ahead and just focuses heavily on westernizing the entirety of Egypt. We're talking about, like, new guns, new drill, sending people abroad to study in Paris and all that. And especially he built a very good rapport with the French, despite the fact that he only came into power by kicking out the French, you know. But he sent, like, his own kids, as well as, like, various, like, younger elites that he brought up into power in society, sent them abroad to Paris to study in their military academies, has them bring over a bunch of military advisors, as well as engineers, to, like, instate a bunch of new factories. And he also does, like, a massive, like, labor recruitment process. And by labor recruitment, I'm not talking about something on the lines of, like, the New Deal, you know, for Roosevelt. He's not going about just, like, offering people jobs. He's just straight up plucking people from the farms and being like, welcome to the Corvée, the National Labor Conscription Services. You will now have to spend a predetermined period of your life working with minimal pay for the government. And
Nice.
you're welcome for, this purpose that we are giving you. And meanwhile, these farmers are like, wait, hold on. Who's going to take care of my farms? And then the big landowners are like, we are. We're just going to purchase that right up and then gobble it all up. Yum, yum, yum. Free land. So, yeah, fun times for all at that point.
Wonderful.
But say what you will. For Muhammad Ali, with the entire process of going ahead and like really kicking Egypt into the next gear of industrialization, if you will. Yeah, it sucks for a lot of the people. And it's especially terrible since like the whole basis of his industrialization is to build up a powerful military machine. So he's got like new factories setting up to like build cannons and like modern guns. And he also like drafts large amounts of that labor force into his military as well through like forced conscription. He's doing all this stuff. And that means that everything's built on the idea that if he can keep the military industrial complex rolling, he's able to bring Egypt into like the 19th century on par with Europe. That doesn't work so well if you're not allowed to keep on building up an army. So kind of like what happened with Germany after World War I, after Muhammad Ali attempts to like basically take over Istanbul, and fails miserably and gets kicked back by the Ottomans and the British, he has to go ahead and completely demilitarize Egypt for the most part. And that meant that his economy was basically just gone.
Yeah,
That'll go over well.
Yeah, so he didn't really diversify that much. But on the bright side, there's this new crop called cotton that seems to grow really well in Egypt. So maybe that will be a nice like kind of transitory economy, a cash crop economy, just to keep things running until they find a new industrial source to build things up on. Well, that didn't really work out that well. So after Muhammad Ali dies, he's like senile in his old age, and his son, who was like the leading military figure in his father's army, actually dies before his dad. So they have to like go down two lines, and they find his grandsons, who are like just some of the most inept people out there.
You hate to see it.
Now, he's like, before he dies, Muhammad Ali is actually still convinced that his son's still alive. Which is, it's really kind of sad because like people just couldn't break the news to him. And even when they did, he just wouldn't accept it. But when he does die, he dies thinking that he secured the governorship of Egypt. At this point, the viceroyship of Egypt, or the Khedive of Egypt, in his family line, and he thinks that that's going to make sure that everything's going to run great. Well, greatness usually doesn't last more than 3 generations, and sure enough, his grandkids take over, and they don't do a lot. That's super good. One thing that they still try to keep on going is they basically open the floodgates for Western intervention, but in the meantime, they're like more busily focused on breeding horses and nailing horseshoes onto like their stable masters who refuse to take care of their horses well enough. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. There's like this story about, I think his name was Abbas, Khedive Abbas, who's like the second Khedive after Muhammad Ali dies, to like take over and run things in Egypt. And he like apparently got pissed off because one of his like stable masters didn't tend to one of his prized horses well enough. So he goes ahead, heats up a horseshoe, and nails it into the foot of that stable master.
God.
Yeah. So that's
Very
what they were doing in their free time. But, because of how weak they were, the West were starting to increase their presence. And the British and the French especially were taking a keen interest in Egypt at this time. Britain was big on the whole like building trains kind of thing. So they're like, what's the best way to exploit a country? By developing a strong infrastructure that allows us to exploit things faster, So they're like, oh, why don't we, out of the generosity of our hearts, reach out to you Egyptians and help pay for part of a railway that's going to connect the shipping ports of Alexandria to Cairo. And from Cairo, we're going to connect it, to all the other big cities in Egypt? No, don't be silly. We're going to connect it to all the big agricultural estates so we can ship cotton out by the trainful. So you peasants can keep walking or riding your donkeys to and fro. We're just gonna prioritize the cotton at this point.
I mean,
So
it's not a horrible thing to do at all by any stretch.
no,
People
it's
get
just,
a little mad.
Train's a train. Who doesn't
Yeah.
love trains?
right? I mean, does it matter that you spent like 10 years of your life through forced labor conscription through your own government to build a train track that you yourself will never be able to ride? No. Why would you complain about that?
I suppose.
You know.
If you put
Yeah.
it that way.
And oh, by the way, that guy Abbas, the guy who like nailed a fucking horseshoe into his stable master's foot, that guy then gets murdered by his own slaves, and then people were like, "Good riddance to that guy." And but like it was during this like chaotic period in 1854 that our good friend, the Frenchman Ferdinand de Lesseps, is like bopping around in Egypt, and he's like, "Oh, I see another opportunity to make some money." And he reaches out and is like, "Could you sign on the dotted line here? And you've basically given us the rights to use your forced labor to help dig a canal from Suez, connecting the Mediterranean to the Red Sea." And
Does
the
it still
Khedive
count
was like,
if they don't read French? Is the contract binding?
well, I mean, considering that, as another example, the Spanish back in their days, when they were like busy slaughtering the natives of South America, they would, because like the king of Spain was like, you can't just go in there and kill them if they're willing to like surrender and agree to like convert. You got to give them the chance. So you got to tell them that if they want to keep everything, all they have to do is convert to Christianity. You got to give them the chance. You got to read them their rights. So what these people did was, first off, they kept it all in Spanish. So it's not like the natives would understand it. And secondly, just to be extra sure, in case there were some like translators who like lived in those villages, they would sneak up to those villages in the dead of night, read it out in a silent whisper,
What?
make sure that there's a witness to hear this, and then they're like, well, they didn't respond within the hour, let's go slaughter them. So
Oh my
like
God.
at least the
Easy.
French had the common courtesy to offer a translation. So the Khedive, who at this point was still once again busy with his racehorses and horseshoes, could like at least kind of know what he was signing away. But like for him, he was too busy focusing on his private luxuries and fighting a few small wars that he wasn't able to win to like actually go ahead and like focus on the development of the canalway.
It's
And
just
also
some minor
Reading the contract
incompetence.
in the middle of the night is something that I would have done when I was 7.
Wait, no. This is literally a plot point in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the very first 10 minutes of the film, or like chapter of the book, is Earth getting blown up because there was a eviction note. They were building a like a space highway through Earth that was clearly noted in the local galaxy, the local like solar system cluster.
Sorry, I'm not a nerd, so I don't read nerd books like you.
Yeah, come on. What made you think we were nerds like you, Will?
Wow.
It's not like we're doing a history
me.
podcast in the middle of summer.
That'd be stupid. I mean, what else are you gonna do right now, realistically?
Bro. Who other than nerds would stay inside all day during a perfectly good summer? Ha!
Yep,
No.
a normal summer that has nothing going on.
Yeah.
No
absolutely.
pandemic going on at all, you know?
Mhm.
Mm.
But yeah, so as a result, they're able to get like the deal of a century by just getting this whole thing signed off. But like Abbas was at least like conscious enough to be like, hold your horses. I want like around 40% of whatever you got going there. So like the Frenchman's like, all right, okay, you know, like we're getting free labor, you know, to build this freaking canal. So like giving less than half of the total ownership of the eventual canal to some crazy king who's probably not even focusing on his finances to go and nail horseshoes into people, probably not a bad deal, you know? So they go ahead, they all sign off on that. And next thing you know, they see about like 1.5 million laborers being forced to work on the canal.
By the
One
way,
and
you
a
can't
half.
get the fact that you said hold your horses past me. I see it. I saw you.
Oh, you know, I mean, I wasn't hoping for people to catch it, but now that you nailed it in, might as well. You know?
Excuse me.
I imagine this.
The first pun is fine. This you don't need.
The second one is
it's
it's too much. It's too
Would you
much.
say the second one was a shoe
Yeah, I
in?
would. Yep. Yep.
Oh,
A
no.
shoe in? No.
Oh, no.
Yes. This is the
sorry.
quality content that you came here for, I'm sure.
I didn't mean to do it.
But yeah, so we see like 1.5 million laborers, Egyptian laborers, basically forced to work on the canal project. The Suez Canal Company started. And from like 1859 to 1863, like we saw thousands of laborers just dying from this terrible condition. Now, at this point, they had steam engines, they had trains, they had like giant steam excavators that would be able to help dig through all this stuff. But the French were like, I mean, if we got unlimited free labor from the natives, why bother with any of that stuff? So for that entire period of time, it was basically just digging the canal out by hand. So once again, shovels and picks, just like their ancestors used to do it back during the times of the pharaohs, pretty much. As you can imagine, that was some backbreaking work right there.
1.5 million shovels just having at it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, that was the total number of people that were drafted to work on the entire thing. You know,
Right.
people die, people break their limbs, and then they get replaced.
Right.
That's some very like opening montage of Prince of Egypt vibes.
Honestly, yeah.
The people get replaced, not the limbs. There was a dangling participle in there. I'm just a little concerned, right? The limbs were not replaced.
No, they didn't have like peg arms trying to like shovel with like, you know, hook
it would be
hands
kind of
things.
funny in a morbid way. It would be morbid.
I suppose. I wouldn't hold it past them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they were cutting off hands in the Congo.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, no, not at this point. At this point, no one was really fighting over the Congo just yet.
Oh yeah,
it was just
they were innovating in Egypt.
Yeah, this is known as the heart of it's kind of a problematic term, but they called it Black Africa. Black in the sense that it's, you know, like the dark spot on the map. No one knows what's there. But I mean, you can't avoid the racial connotation there. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's where the title does come from as well.
Yeah.
But where it's closer to quote unquote civilization, we see colonial powers jumping in and basically just abusing the local populace to like go ahead and dig a fucking canal that, once again, is nearly 200 kilometers long by hand. You know, so good luck, have fun with that.
200 kilometers divided by 1.5 million.
Yeah, and we're not talking about the width and the depth of the canal either. You're just talking length at that point.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's still a canal if it's like a 6 foot deep like ditch, right?
It doesn't connect two bodies of water. That's what a canal is.
Yeah. If you make a really long trench, it technically counts.
If it's a drainage ditch that's that long, I suppose that's still an impressive feat, but it's like impressive in the sense of like, wow, you have too much time on your hands.
Yeah. It's still a canal. You can't say it's not a canal.
Yeah.
For like paper boats, maybe, you know. And
I mean, would you call the space in between my double basin sink a canal?
Well, it's not like confined by walls on the sides, so I'd say no.
It's confined by the walls of the sink on the by the ledge of the sink and the divider.
I think a canal in total needs to be connecting two natural bodies of water.
That's a root canal.
That's just one reservoir.
You can connect the reservoir to another body of water with a canal.
A root canal is just a canal with a tree in it.
It's a sick canal with a what?
It's a canal with a tree in it.
Oh yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Is that what a root canal is?
Yeah.
Well, you know, you gotta go to the etymology or the root of the phrase to be able to figure out the meaning.
Dude, did you just say the word in a different context? Then no way. That's funny. This will make me laugh.
I'll hold off on the puns for a bit, but we'll see how far we can go. But basically, as I was saying before, 1850s, we see a lot of like poor administration and a lot of Europeans taking advantage of this time as well. And this wasn't until 1863 with the crowning of Khedive Ismail, or Ismail?
Probably Ismail.
Ismail.
Oh.
With
I'm
Khedive
gonna say
Ismail.
as the Arabic major that it's a
We'll defer to you on that. Yeah, we had a native French speaker helping us with the terrible French pronunciations in our last series.
Wait, but you weren't doing that on purpose?
Well, I mean,
It,
how
well,
do
it
you
was on
read
purpose,
intent?
but it was still terrible.
Oh, I thought those were the. I thought that was the proper French
You
pronunciation.
spent so much time. You spent so much time in the Napoleon Total War. I figured you'd have every French phrase on tap.
You know,
Hey,
he can only listen. I don't want to out you, but you've watched a lot of anime,
Are you
and
talking to me?
I can't
Or is
help
it
but
Will?
notice that you don't know how to speak Japanese.
Wow, shit, you got me, dude.
I did get you.
It's funny because on our side, it just sounds like Will's talking to himself about his
Yeah.
anime addiction.
The schizophrenia.
Your voices are just so freaking similar.
I speak a little slower, I think.
Should I get more?
Tiny bit.
Sure.
But basically, 1863, Ismail takes over in Egypt, and like his big proclamation is that Egypt is no longer part of Africa; it's part of Europe. Which,
That's
like,
a hot take.
yeah, that's I mean, like, people say like, oh, you know, Egypt, you can consider that part of Asia, but like, no one's ever gone and stretched it as far as to say it was part of Europe,
Except for
but-
them. They
except for Ismail. And if you're the Khedive of Egypt, I mean, who's gonna stop you? You know,
It might be said by some people in the behind the bar and the where the historians hang out by the dumpster.
yeah, every once in a while.
They might be
Because
something they, scratch onto the dumpster.
They don't have jobs. Laugh.
Oh, that's hitting a bit hard and close to home right now for a
My bad,
history
my
major.
bad. My bad.
Hey,
Yep. That's why I'm doing this. But basically, his whole ambition is that, look, Egypt only gets pushed around because we're seen as non-European. So if we boost our prestige a bit and make us as westernized as possible, there's no way that the French and the British are going to keep on trying to, you know, basically just squeeze us for every last penny, right?
Yep.
Right?
It's
There's
not
no
like
way
the
we're gonna
Balkans
do
have
that.
been involved in proxy wars over the last 300
Oh,
years.
no, absolutely not.
Those
And
dummies
it's-
forgot about racism.
But basically, he just goes ahead and he starts pouring in millions of dollars worth of money in tax revenue and loans into building up all this new infrastructure, like, once again, expanding on the whole railway that the British were doing, connecting Cairo and Alexandria. They started building like entire European quarters, or like just straight up demolishing old like quarters within the cities and building them in a European style. I remember I saw a picture of Cairo during this time period, and it literally just looks like fucking Paris. Like the buildings are all built in that way. It's written in both Arabic and in French, like on all the street signs.
Oh, jeez.
And he's just like spending all this money because like he's like, if we look like Europeans, we're gonna be treated like Europeans, you know? And meanwhile, the Europeans are just coming in and they're like, wow, I mean, we were gonna do this once we colonize you, but if you're spending your own money on it, more power to you, bruh. So
it's like
They just-
reverse Algeria.
pretty much, yeah. They're doing this on their own, and we don't need to drop a dime into this. But he also goes ahead and spends exuberant amounts of money on traveling throughout the world because he's like, I'm just gonna go. Like at the end of the day, the name of the game is networking. You know, I'm gonna go and hit up all the royal courts in Europe. I'm gonna drop by the Crown of Austria-Hungary, say, "What's up, Franz Joseph? You hanging in there?" Drop by the Prussians, see how they're doing. Oh, you're called Germany now? Might be. And you know, go over to Great Britain, check in on the Prince of Wales, and see how they're holding on to India. Like, if I network as well as I can, I'm gonna make all the crowns of Europe my homies. You know, and you know, the bro code's gonna prevent us from screwing over each other. Like, clearly, the nobility and the royals of Europe don't backstab each other, right?
When
So
was
if
the bro code formally developed? Like, I don't think it existed yet.
I think the bro code was decided when they said the strong do what they can and the weak must suffer what they will, or something like that. I think that's the Malayan dialogue back in ancient Greece.
Okay.
That's the true
So it's
bro
been
code right
around.
there. Yeah,
They can't
yeah.
colonize Egypt if we colonize it for
Ourselves.
them.
Ourselves.
Yeah, pretty much. And honestly, like as I said before, he's spending an exuberant amount of money. And just like a little like connection here to the American Revolution, 1863, or sorry, the American Civil War. This is like in the heart of like this is in the middle of the American Civil War. And you know, for the Americans, especially the American South, fighting a war when your ships are basically being outgunned and your ports are blockaded by your enemy, kind of makes it hard to ship cotton to the rest of the world. But for
What about
Egypt,
King Cotton? What about King Cotton?
yeah, well,
They
King
forgot
Cotton
about
ain't
it.
got free navigation, you know. King Cotton's running through blockades on a tiny little boat that barely pays for itself by the time it arrives in England. But
Yeah.
the British, with their like huge like textile mills and all that stuff, are like, we need cotton. And Egypt's like, yo, did someone say cotton? We got cotton. So basically, Ismail is like, we got this made, you know? Like, we just take all the cotton that we're exporting here and we could pay off all the loans that we've basically incurred trying to build European cities in Egypt, and everything's going to be fine. We will have a sole monopoly on cotton. It's going to be great. No one's going to touch it. And then the Civil War kind of ends in 65.
Ah, that's not convenient.
Yeah, so his like fast cash flow just kind of dribbles out. And then meanwhile, England's also like, yeah, actually India's kind of also a good place to grow cotton. So we're just going to use that because they're our colony and we could extort them as much as we want instead of having to pay tariffs and shit to you guys. So yeah, we're going to duck out. So as a result, Ismail's entire economy, which is built on a cash crop of cotton, just plummets with the end of the Civil War. And now they're just heavily in debt. But that's never stopped Ismail from doing things his way. So he goes ahead and, well, first thing he does, he takes over and he's like, new king, no Khedive in the house. We're going to do a little reforms here and there. We're going to change things up with the Suez Canal Company. We're going to get a bigger share from you guys. And we're going to stop that forced labor shit. You know, it's not cool. Just straight up, you know, murdering thousands of people, digging things in the sand with their basic hand tools. Hot take, it's not a good thing to do, bro. And the French
That
were
was
like,
pretty hot.
It was pretty hot, yeah.
It
So the
is Egypt
French-
after all.
Mm-hmm. And the French were like, all right, fine, we'll import some of the technology that we've been using in France and we'll put machines to work. Gosh, you're such a killjoy. But as a result, Ismail, you know, you could look at him as like kind of a guy with the interests of Egypt in his mind. He goes ahead and he stops the forced labor stuff, at least in the course of the construction of the canal. And by 1869, they still were able to finish the canal. So over 10 years of construction. And finally, he goes ahead and blam, we've connected the Mediterranean all the way to the Red Sea. And this was like revolutionary for everyone. And I mean, like if you think about the powers during this time, who do you think would be like the most ecstatic that this canal's there? You know?
Probably England.
England. Why is that?
Yeah, because they got the Indian thing over there.
Yeah,
They also have like the world's most prominent navy.
that too. That too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If
If
anyone's
they
going to
post-
make the most use of waterways, it'd probably be them.
And yeah, now they suddenly got a nice, convenient shortcut to one of their largest colonies.
Yeah. Yeah. But remember what I said about the Suez Canal Company? And who owns the shares for that company?
Right, 40% is the Egypt people.
The Egyptians. And then the other, like, over half of all the shares are owned by the French. So the British were kind of just screwed out of this a bit, you know? I mean, they're still like, we don't need a canal. We got ships. We could sail around Africa. We control South Africa. It's fine. The only people that need to go through the canal are losers like France, you know? But still, during the grand opening on November 17th of 1869, the Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne of England, is there. And, you know, he's partying with all the other heads of Europe. And surprisingly enough, not any real Muslim rulers were invited to this grand opening. Because, you know, Khedive Ismail's whole like, oh, we're actually part of Europe now. He's like, nah, I'm hanging out with my homies. I'm hanging out with my friends, my true friends. None of you guys, like the Ottoman Sultan, you guys aren't invited. So they're just like cruising on the Nile. They're watching people like, they have like huge banquets with like entertainers such as like Bedouin horse riders and also like flame eaters and stuff like that. Just everywhere. And they're like, he's spending exuberant amounts of money just to make sure everyone sees that like, look, Egypt is the new Paris, you know? Like, we even got ourselves a canal. Like, what more could you want at this point? And the British, especially, like, once they see that the canal is actually a thing now, they're definitely a bit jealous you know? Because they're like, well, fuck, that was, I do believe that's now the fastest way to India. And they're just like looking at the French who are like sailing through the canal. It's like, we can go all the way to India faster than you. And the British are just like, well, that's a lost opportunity. I suppose we should just back out of this. We've lost this one, old chap. I say we just pull up anchor and we sail off to some other uncolonized port. What ho, eh? And as a result, the British stayed out of Egypt for the rest of time.
Good.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Nice, happy story.
Yeah.
And then the British bankers came in, and they're like, now hold on a minute.
Psych.
I don't know why I have an American accent, but capitalism and America just seems to go hand in hand. I just took a lumber crunch
It
here.
changed.
It changed. If you look at the numbers here, as I'm chewing my fat cigar and drinking a cup of brandy, if you look at the numbers here, it seems like the Egyptians owe us a lot of money. Especially for that party that they just paid for. I mean, I don't know where they got all the money for the strippers, belly dancers, and 5 river cruises that last 3 weeks. But they apparently took a good-sized loan from our end. And now they gotta pay for that shit. So now Britain's like, oh. Haha. Well,
Is this what they sound like in Bristol?
What?
Is this like a Bristol accent or something?
Hold on.
It's a very, very British accent from a very, very different time period. Once transplanted, and then you fast forward another few hundred years. But they're just like looking at the numbers here, and they're like, oh, wow. I mean, before, the big thing that we were hating on was the humanitarian costs of the whole canal. Because the British, the bleeding hearts that they were the ones who were criticizing the French and the Egyptians for abusing their forced labor and during the construction of the canal. Which they promptly stopped doing once they realized that they can get a share in the profits of the canal. So, like, humanitarianism? Who ever heard of that?
Money.
Yeah. But also, now that they look at this and they're like, yo, Britain could just go ahead and buy up some of that debt. Like, that's free real estate, you know? And the best thing that we can do afterwards is that if we can't pay it back, we'll just foreclose on the fucking country. You know?
Imagine the bank taking your country.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, like, the British were like, well, we tried that with India, you know, the British East India Company. That's basically what that was.
We'll seize the Suez Canal as your collateral.
We'll seize the Suez Canal as collateral, and we'll stick it to the French, too, you know? But as a result, the British just jump right in, and they see this lovely investment opportunity. Because at this point, Ismail is just shelling out millions, and he's seen his debt basically around this time jump from a total of, I'm going to say, it was like around $1 million at the start of his reign. It increases 100-fold by like the middle of his rule.
Debt
So like
goes
after
up
the Suez
by
Canal.
100 times.
Yeah, and also the lack of any sort of like real means of paying for things. It's definitely kind of an issue, you know? And the British, you know, the predatory lenders that they are, they're like, oh, no, there's no debt problem. You could just keep on borrowing money from us. What? You want another world tour? Yes, take another 40 million. Have fun with that. And as we all know, there's no such thing as a free meal or a free canal. So we're going to dive into just how the British can extort people for all the money and all the land that they're worth. But that's going to be for the next episode. In the meantime, thank you for lending us your ear. We won't foreclose on that, trust me. And we hope that you'll join us to hear about how the British aim to make a big buck on the Suez Canal.